Well, I reached the point where there's kind of like that decision where whether you keep going or stop and turn back before you go too far. And I just decided to keep on going. Here's the inner fenders. That was a lot more difficult than what I thought it was gonna be. There's not a lot of bolts holding this thing on, honestly, but these were a pain. Mostly because these, it's hard to see here. Let me see if I can point them out. But right inside that lip in there, there's the captive nuts that hold the inner fender on. And of course, every one of those was rusted and stripped out to where the nut was just spinning. So I had to cut almost all of them off. So when I put it back together, we're gonna have to address those nuts so that I can run the screws up in to hold this on, because you can't get at them. So I'll probably have to just get some new nuts and go through and tack them all on inside there. Or maybe they make some clips that go in there. Actually, they probably do. I'll probably have to just get the clips. But you can kind of see some of this rust now. Let me get a little flashlight so we can kind of see what we're working with here. This is some of the stuff I want to try to fix. A little bit of that going into the floorboards. It's not terrible. That body mount is really squished. We may end up just buying a hockey puck or something and putting it in and replacing that with a little thicker, a little stiffer. Yeah, so here's the one of the main things I wanted to address with pulling this front end off is to get back down in here, and this is ugly. This was done with the cab in place, all welded from kind of underneath, and it was kind of done just haphazard just to get it together to mount the front end, because I had to cut this front crossmember off the old truck for that front to sit on. So that crossmember had to go on something, and because I had to hack the frame off, well, here we are. So I'm gonna reinforce this with some plate probably and clean that up and make it stronger. If I were to ever hit something with the bumper, I'm sure this would just tear right off the way it is. So we're gonna reinforce that. But it's gonna make it a lot easier to pull the engine out of here now and put it back in, because that's my goal, is to get this thing out now this week. Clean it up really well, figure out how deep I'm gonna go into it, and paint it, gaskets, whatever else, I'm not exactly sure. But also, this annoying squeak here, of course, there it goes. That was just driving me absolutely insane all summer. So we're gonna figure out where that is. I've got some broken grease zerks here. That one's broken off. So we'll pull those grease fittings off and put new ones on. And we'll pump a bunch of grease in there while this is all off so I can get at it all. And we'll make sure that everything is getting grease that needs to be getting grease. We'll take a look at my ball joint on there. They've never been replaced because they still have the factory rivets on there. But they actually feel pretty solid, but they are blowing a lot of grease out. So we're gonna hit this good with the pressure washer and get it all cleaned off. This needs to be addressed. This was my scubby shim job to lift up the engine a little to get it to clear, the oil pan to clear right there. You can see it gets a little tight in there. So that was my reasoning behind that. So we're gonna get that fixed, more permanent, whether I put some big rubber spacers in there or build it up with metal and weld it in or something. It's a little bit different thickness here because of how I flipped that engine mount backwards. So we're gonna address that. But again, oil leaks, you can kind of see just in general, oil leaking a little bit of everywhere. So we want to get that figured out, cleaned up. We'll do a compression test on it and maybe hit it with some paint. Maybe, I don't know, jack it up and maybe cut a loop of coil spring out of there and drop it down a little bit. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But that's kind of where we're at with that. Hood's sitting over there. Got my engine stand there, ready to go. Front end sitting on the back. We may come and get a 2x4 or something, a dead blow, and just knock out a few of these. This I don't think there's a whole lot I can do with. But we'll knock out a few of these dents here. Nothing too crazy. Maybe try to knock that one out a little bit. But we're not going to go too crazy with it. I mean, I might experiment a little bit on welding sheet metal. I've never really tried it on a vehicle before, so maybe we'll cut some of this junk out here and weld in a new piece. Maybe if I get a donor fender, I could cut a section of it out and then piece it in there. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so that's where we're at with this. Also, I pulled the radiator out and realized that it was leaking. So some of my money I'm going to throw into this thing is going to be reserved for that. In my last video, I kind of threw it out there just to make some suggestions, excuse me, as to kind of what I should put the money into on this thing. But unfortunately, that was something I hadn't accounted for. But it is something I wanted to do eventually anyway, to get a nice aluminum radiator. The problem was with this deep radiator that was on it, the bottom side neck on the radiator was really low, and you can see how this was actually resting on the frame. So what I'll be able to do with the new radiator is that'll be up just a little bit. I'll be able to clearance that because I'll have some room to move that radiator up and down, because the stock one on these trucks is really tall, and I'm going to put just like a half-ton version, so there'll be a lot of room up and down I can go on that front end and finish and miss all that stuff. So that's kind of a plus. I wanted to do a radiator anyway, so there we are, I guess. Maybe we'll even go with an electric fan, just get rid of that mechanical fan on there. It's kind of nice not having those things spinning on there. Yeah, so this was a big one today, getting this off. We will probably pull the bumper off and maybe try to straighten that, or maybe even just snag a new one at a junkyard. There's a local junkyard here that's got several of these trucks. They even have this color of truck. So it'd be kind of sweet to even snag a hood, because this thing's pretty messed up. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so some good progress today on that. I'm not sure what the next part is going to be. Probably just yanking that engine out. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully we'll get that out, put on a stand, and we'll kind of do a video of that, kind of taking it apart and just looking inside and just seeing what kind of condition that's in. I did have the intake off at one point and the valve covers off before I put it in this truck, I believe. Yeah, I did have the valve covers off because they changed them. And everything looked okay. I did adjust the valves. I have not had the pan off. So we'll pull the pan off. We'll check the oil pump, probably put a new one of those in. Maybe check the bearings, pull the main caps and look at those. So we'll take a look and see what the inside looks like and see how far into that we go. The less, the better. Just because we're going to keep it cheap. We just want a driver. Who cares about a high performance rig? I just don't want it burning a bunch of oil, which it doesn't. It doesn't smoke at all. So as long as we have good compression and it ran great. So we're just going to keep it minimal. So yeah, stay tuned.